Mass threats today against schools and Jewish organizations across Colorado. Denver tells city departments to prepare for cuts to pay for migrant services, as the mayor floats the idea of maybe telling all the newly arrived migrants to move along somewhere else. After the messy rollout of Colorado's universal pre-K system, some school districts are taking control.
Sometimes you have to turn on a dime and do things a little bit differently.
And rolling around town with Denver's so-called bike mayor to talk about the good, the bad, and the non-existent tonight on Next. A wave of threats against Jewish organizations and school districts across Colorado today have law enforcement investigating. At this point, they say the threats are not credible. Colorado's Division of Homeland Security says threats were made against at least 40 school districts and synagogues. The FBI is involved as well. We saw a similar surge in mass swatting calls to Colorado schools last February, and synagogues in Boulder have dealt with a number of threats last month. The state just gave $1 million in security funding to synagogues, churches, and mosques. They cited the threats related to the Israel-Hamas war. That state funding could be used for additional security officers, to buy security equipment, and to run security training. Denver Mayor Mike Johnston is asking every city department to prepare to cut their budgets, as the city thinks it might spend 10 to 15% of its general fund this year helping migrants.
We did sit down with agency heads yesterday and ask them to start preparing to evaluate ways in which they can absorb $180 million of cuts in the 2024 budget.
The mayor says new arrivals are not slowing down. 7 more buses arrived from the border this week. The city set up 9 shelter sites for migrants, and Johnston says they're all full.
It means that we have now filled all of the space that we have for sheltering in the city and county. We have filled every single hotel site that we have and the 2 congregate sites that we added. And so we do not have space to add more folks that arrive, nor do we have staff to support them, nor do we have resources to support them.
So the city's trying to move migrants out of those congregate shelters, connecting them with housing applications, even offering to pay up to 3 months' rent for people without jobs. The mayor's now saying that unless something changes, Denver may turn to offering all newly arriving migrants paid transportation to other cities. That's a process that's drawn anger from places like Chicago and New York. So while the mayor's calling on city departments to prepare to slash their budgets, Denver's Safety Net Hospital says it desperately needs more funding after it served thousands of migrants last year. Denver Health estimates about 8,000 migrants from Central America have relied on that hospital and its clinics for a wide range of care, from emergency room visits to vaccines to dentistry. Denver Health CEO told City Council today that the city and the state have not reimbursed the hospital for those services. $136 million in uncompensated care for patients last year. About $35 million of that is for patients coming from somewhere outside Denver.
While I have tremendous compassion for what's going on, it's heartbreaking. It's going to break Denver Health in a way that we didn't even anticipate when we negotiated the 2024 operating agreement. We close beds. To me, that's abominable. I don't want to do that. But because our operating costs exceed what our revenues are, we are turning down patients every day.
Denver Health says it is also lobbying for more state and federal funding since it's providing care for Coloradans who don't live inside Denver, as well as care for those migrants. Preschool is where kids learn to play nicely with others. That is a skill that schools and the state are still working on after the rocky first year of Colorado's universal pre-K program. The state doesn't open enrollment again until next month, but some of Colorado's biggest school districts have started the process anyway. Marshall Zellinger explains why.
In my office, I have a little gift that someone gave me to remind me that we've had to do this a lot. We've had to pivot a lot.
You wouldn't think enrolling preschool students is the same kind of lift as Ross, Rachel, and Chandler moving a couch up a staircase.
Pivot! Pivot!
But it turns out the pivot couch might be easier.
Sometimes you have to turn on a dime and do things a little bit differently.
Priscilla Hopkins is the director of early education for Denver Public Schools, which starting Thursday will directly enroll preschool students to schools within DPS, which means parents can get into a school without having to use the statewide universal preschool portal and the algorithm that helps pick a school based on the parents' top choices.
We asked to go back to our process that we had previously used with a lot of success, and after many meetings and collaboration with a new department, they have agreed to allow us to use our own choice and enrollment process.
This year, we have taken advantage of some of the liberties given by Department of Early Childhood. We are direct enrolling our students.
Westminster Public Schools and even Jeffco schools started direct enrolling preschool students last month when enrollment for all grades opened up.
They may have a second grader and a fifth grader as well as a preschooler. They're trying to get all their kids into the same school. I can't run a different enrollment process for the preschooler than I would for their older sibling in the interest of providing good customer service to families.
Direct enrolling with the district is not the system Democratic Governor Jared Polis wanted last August when I asked him why not let students go directly to the school they want and take the state funding with them.
When you have public funding, you have this element of we want fairness rather than favoritism on who gets the coveted slots, right? So if there's 20 slots and 30 people want them, we want to have a lottery.
That lottery will still exist, except several school districts have pivoted and are getting a head start. It is rare, except for breaking news, that I am shocked live on TV. You heard in that story from DPS in Westminster that they worked with the Department of Early Childhood to work on this process. And here's a statement from that same early childhood department. If true, it's disappointing to see districts already planning to give families preferential treatment for their preschool services in the coming school year. So the official statement I have right now from the department that these school districts said they worked with is, this is not the process that we asked for them to do.
Kids love trains, and this is the Hot Mess Express.
They're like going like this with trains.
I mean, this is astonishing. You can understand year one is going to be janky, right? And year one was a mess. Year two, you hope it's smoother, and instead we got people talking past each other already.
Hopefully I'll get clarity. We have the opportunity to talk with the people from early childhood tomorrow to get some clarity. But I mean, I have sound bites on camera and quotes that we will put on the web story from these districts that make it clear that they worked with the department before they just did this.
Yeah, and I mean, end of the day, like families don't give like a rat's hindquarters like what's going on with these different groups. Like they just want a reliable process to get their kid into pre-K.
Right, and if it works this way, what's confusing is, okay, let's say that it's a direct enrollment with the district. How are those direct enrollments going to work with that algorithm when you actually have to apply through the state system? How will the districts block off spots and say, hey, they're already spoken for because we took care of that a couple months ago. We just need to make sure we get the money, and you make sure you block off the spot so that you don't double up on something we've already figured out.
It's like musical chairs, but it's whether your kid gets a spot in school. Marshall, thank you. Controversial former Denver School Board Director Aon Anderson is dropping his run for the State House, saying that he wants to make sure that a black candidate wins instead of the white or Latino candidate in that race to represent Northeast Denver. And Anderson is also now asking the public for money to create a new nonprofit.
Aon Anderson flirted with a run for city council before announcing that he would run for re-election to the school board. It was flirting with DPS students, Anderson denied knowing they were students, that got him censured by his colleagues, part of a long string of controversies. And with his support in a public poll at 9%, Anderson decided to leave the school board and run for the House instead. The House will not be his home after all, as today Anderson left that race to announce he's founding a nonprofit focused on black achievement in education. While Anderson is collecting donations, he said he wants $30,000 to start. His organization is not an IRS-recognized 501c3 nonprofit. He expanded a disclaimer on the fundraising page after we asked questions.
Anderson had said that he would be rejoining DPS in some undisclosed job late last year. He had briefly sought a conflict of interest waiver that would allow him to take that job with DPS while still on the board. As of now, Anderson is not working for DPS. Today, he told me that in the future, he plans to be a fully compensated CEO of that nonprofit and would still like a job with DPS. So it's really hard for any hospital to find nurses these days, even harder for small rural hospitals. Now a college on the Western Slope is going to try to train them up and keep them local. Here's Jennifer Meckles.
There is plenty to offer in Colorado's Gunnison County. Plenty of peaks to climb, slopes to ski, and flowers to stun. And yet, Gunnison is plenty short on something else.
We lose them and then we never get them back.
The nursing shortage is a nationwide problem, even more painful in small rural communities. Nicole Huff knows it well as Chief Nursing Officer at Gunnison Valley Health.
I think more of the challenge is really recruiting and retaining and really keeping those that want to advance their careers from leaving the valley.
So we know it's a huge demand. We know that it's something that we can address.
Now, Western Colorado University in Gunnison is trying to build a new nursing program so students can stay here not just to learn, but to work.
That we can help train nurses in a rural setting that's unique and prepares them for rurally based jobs.
Emily McMahill helped write the grant that got the university started. Western is now waiting on a second $1.5 million grant opportunity to build this out.
That we want to help students that love this rural environment, love the small town feel, have the skill set then to practice in a similar environment in the future.
Rural nursing is an art, being able to float from the emergency department over into OB and help deliver a baby and from OB into med-surg or up into OR.
And to fill the gap, Gunnison Valley Health leans on very expensive contract labor, basically travel nurses.
The rest of us that live here and love Gunnison, we're taking care of our friends and we're taking care of our family. And so this will help us grow those nurses that get to take care of their community.
Western already has a pre-nursing program, so if they get the funding to expand this into a full degree, they then hope to enroll the first students in the fall of 2025. Meanwhile, Gunnison Valley Health is getting really creative, Kyle. Like everybody else trying to recruit and retain, they're offering scholarship money, even housing, to try and recruit more nurses to stay there and work.
I've heard a number of people on the Western Slope say the most heartbreaking thing, which is their chief export is their kids. Kids grow up there, find a career, and leave.
But if you now have a university and a hospital as neighbors working together, kind of got a little pipeline, build them up, keep them there. So,
thank you, Jenny. One of Colorado's most prominent election deniers is running out of options to avoid going on trial soon.
If you get a title, right, any kind of title, you kind of have a responsibility, I think, to use it for good.
Meet Denver's new bike mayor, who wants to change how people walk and roll around that city. Next. The seniors who rely on Adams County Meals on Wheels program no longer have to wonder where their next meal is going to come from, at least through May. Today, county commissioners approved a plan to keep that program going for a few months after the nonprofit in charge ran out of money entirely. Adams County is going to put another $500,000 into it while looking for a long-term partner that's financially stable. The meals will be distributed by the existing nonprofit Senior Hub's volunteers. The meals will be made by Volunteers of America, a lower-cost meal provider than what Senior Hub was using when it blew through one-time federal funding halfway through the fiscal year and then told seniors they'd receive their last meal. Well, you got to hand it to Tina Peters. The indicted Mesa County clerk really went big in her effort to avoid an upcoming trial for election system tampering. She sued the United States of America, and she just lost. She sued to stop all the investigations into her breach of Mesa County's voting systems. The Republican clerk admits turning over a copy of voting system data to fellow election conspiracy theorists so that they could try to prove election fraud. Peters unsuccessfully argued in this lawsuit that it was her duty to do that and that investigations are retaliation. A federal judge ruled this week that Peters and her attorneys did not offer evidence that investigators were acting in bad faith or harassing her. Peters is set to go on trial next month for a number of felonies. Lauren Robinson, this is the time of year in which boots crunch at the stock show because there's frost on the ground and it is bitter, bitter cold, and it is coming for us this weekend.
That's right. That's exactly what we're going to see as we move into the weekend. And in the high country, we're going to see that ahead of that. Right now, we're at 38 degrees at DIA. We're dry but cloudy. We have winds coming in from the west at around 5 miles per hour right now. Not too bad, but it does make it feel closer to 34 degrees on the skin. We're going to see gusty winds over the next few days. pretty much consistently. We're not seeing it too bad right now in Denver metro area, but as you make your way to the west, you can see Broomfield seeing wind gusts up to 32 miles per hour, 43 mile per hour wind gusts in Black Hawk, 59 right now in Berthoud Pass. So we're going to continue to see these gusty winds. We're also going to watch for some snow showers to push their way in from this system right now that's sitting over the Pacific Northwest. We're already starting to see some of those snow showers in the high country, so we do have winter weather advisories that'll be in effect tonight through tomorrow morning. Well, we're mostly looking for around 5 to 10 inches of snow across Rocky Mountain National Park, Berthoud Pass, Steamboat Springs, 3 to 7 inches across the high country of Summit County, Breckenridge, Eisenhower Tunnel, 4 to 7 inches, Aspen, Vail, Snowmass, and then the highest totals 8 to 14 inches across Elk-Head and Park Mountains. All of these areas are also going to see winds gusting up to 60 miles per hour. So we know that creates that blowing snow and blizzard and whiteout conditions. So you do want to be aware of possibly hazardous travel there. To the south, we're going to see wind chills, pretty cold, dangerously cold, 30 below possible near San Luis Valley. And that means that in the matter of just 30 minutes, you could see frostbite on exposed skin. For the rest of us, we're going to see that cloud cover build in across the Front Range and Eastern Plains. Overnight lows in the teens and 20s. It's going to feel a lot colder. But the big news is really as we go into the weekend, those highs maxing out in the teens, overnight lows sub-zero.
I want to use it to help my community, and my community is Denver.
A rolling inaugural address from Denver's newest bike mayor, who wants us to take a look at something. Next. Denver has a new mayor of sorts. The Denver Bicycle Lobby has named its bike mayor for the year, and today we went out for a ride.
I just love biking. My name is June Churchill. I'm the recently appointed 2024 Denver Bike Mayor by the Denver Bike Lobby. So Denver's bike infrastructure is defined by some really good infrastructure like our protected bike lanes and our trails, some really bad infrastructure like our painted bike lanes on really dangerous roads, and then just overwhelmingly no infrastructure. Here is the Marion Street Protected Bikeway. It is my favorite piece of bike infrastructure in the city. It is very safe. It is efficient. It gets you where you need to go. On Franklin Street is an example of what I think is a really bad piece of bike infrastructure. There's a bike lane on either side of the road here. One of them is a shared parking lane with cars. You know, if a car door opens, you'll hit it or you'll get pushed into traffic. It's a bike lane in the right place, but it's the wrong kind of bike lane. I want more places to have infrastructure like Wash Park and Marion Street. Lower income folks are more likely to need a bike to go to work, are more likely to use transit, or more likely to walk. But they get substandard infrastructure. Meanwhile, a lot of good investment goes into neighborhoods like this. Everyone deserves to be safe on our roadways and to get to where they're going safely, efficiently, and healthily. If you get a title, you kind of have a responsibility, I think, to use it for good. I have access to the press, to elected officials, and to a broader advocacy platform than most other folks are afforded. And I want to make sure I use it well, and I want to make sure we use it so that we do good things for people. I want to use it to help my community, and my community is Denver.
The Denver Bike Mayor, of course, is a volunteer position. June actually has a degree in physics from DU. These days she works as a legislative aide. Here comes your feedback, Mayor Marissa. Thank you. Back with your feedback next. Feedback tonight from Coach Sobes, talking about Aon Anderson dropping out of the Colorado House District 8 race. He says, so basically, he realized, like the rest of us, that he had no chance in winning. Well, yeah, Coach, that seems about right. I don't know what you, Coach, and what your philosophy is on this, but whether it's Aon Anderson or Congresswoman Lauren Boebert or me playing T-ball, I don't think that there's any shame in quitting so that you don't just get whooped. Chuck writes in to say, are Kyle Clark and Jennifer Meckel's siblings side by side? They look a lot alike. Not that I know of, Chuck.